So basically, first view is what is your view on does one even need coaching as an operations manager, especially in services operation?
Yeah. So basically, yes, I strongly believe that coaching makes a lot of difference, especially when you are in a services operations, and the coaching has to be at multiple levels. Okay, what I'm trying to say is the coaching at a ground level is totally different than the coaching at a mid level. The coaching at a senior level is actually totally different than the coaching at a mid level. As you rightly said, the alignment of the business goals to the KRAs and the OKRs of the operations is extremely important. A lot of times what happens is operations teams work on silos, right? When I say work on silos, basically you become what you measure. So let's say if you are measuring something without even knowing why you are measuring this, then you become an organization where actually you are measuring something which is not even impacting your business, or you don't even know whether it is impacting, right? That is point number one. Point number two is people being people. You ask them to measure something, they will actually figure out a way to kind of turn around and show that metric in a manner that they want to be basically better at it. For example, let's say if
User
you
training.
measure if you measure my tat on my processes, I will figure out a way to make it better, but the overall tat of the company is actually going for a toss. Right. So basically the coaching has to be, as I said, multidimensional. At the same time, coaching has to be, aligned to the business operations. Sorry, the objectives of the business, right? At the same time, this has to be dynamic. Okay. What I'm trying to say is, in today's business environment, see, earlier one Fortune 500 company had an average life, or not Fortune, average company had an average life of 35 years. Now that average age of a company is actually shrinking to 6 to 7 years, and the businesses within this is actually shrinking much faster. What I'm trying to say is in 6 months, you will actually change the way what you are doing. Okay. And with advent of artificial intelligence, the automations, etc., this time is actually constantly going to go down, which means coaching has to be part of your DNA continuously, right? Without coaching, because see, manager doesn't know what to coach. The mid manager doesn't know what to coach. The leadership is actually figuring out how to kind of become competitive enough in the ever-changing dynamics. So there has to be someone third person who has to continuously coach and mentor the team, and hence I become coaching is extremely important in the operation setting.
Super. Okay. Thanks, man. So you have seen me work and coach, mentor people. So what's your take on, my approach to coaching that you have seen for the like 15 years we have worked together and you know me?
So basically, I'll tell you something very personal, anecdotal. So you were the first person who brought me into operations. Okay, which means in 2014, since 2006 when I started my career to 2014, around 8 years, which is actually 75 to 80% of my corporate life. I was an analyst. Okay, I was an analyst. I used to love numbers. I used to love presentations, etc., etc. When we started SellerWorks, okay, I was absolutely novice at operations. Okay, I can figure out, okay, how do I improve the operations? How do I, what are the numbers, etc., etc. But I never implemented operations. So you are the first person to actually introduce me to operations where the tire meets or the rubber meets the road, right? That is very crucial. Now this, without losing sight of the business dynamics, is extremely issuable. So for example, when I started in SellerWorks, actually I struggled a lot for 6 to 7 months, right? Because I had a different mindset, whereas the business had needed something else. At the same time, the type of operations which I was doing, right, was very direct. Which means if there is a fire, I will put myself into the fire and try to solve it. That is something which you actually changed. You told me a couple of things. One, and the most important thing, is delegation. It's like, why do you want to do this? Okay. Now, delegation is a very powerful concept. Why? Because if you delegate, you are trusting your team. A, if you are delegating, then you are also finding out the failure modes of your team, which means you also have to improve the hiring processes, because if you get the wrong people and if you are solving all the problems yourself, then your team is not doing a lot. Which means so your entire overall process you have to change if you start delegating, right? That is point number one. So that is something which I learned from you. Second, which I learned from you, is called dialogue, day in life of, which I still do, not only for me, but for my team members. Okay. Dialogue basically, again, related to delegation, I was very busy, but things were not happening. Now there is a fundamental issue. If a manager is busy and the things are not happening, there's a fundamental issue. So you taught me dialogue, saying that, okay, how do I identify a day in life of yours, and then how do you identify what you can automate, what you can delegate, what you can scrap from your processes, and how do you basically do this on a monthly, quarterly, or a weekly basis, so that you are always efficient and improving. And this dialogue has to be done also for your team members and not for you. This is also kind of coaching, right? So which basically whenever I'm doing dialogue with my team, I'm actually coaching them, right? But at the same time, as an ops head or an ops manager, I will have a limited resource of knowledge. Most of my knowledge will come from problems. These problems are either the escalations from customers or from the business, right? If someone else has to come and give me a perspective, what are the different kind of problems, or how do you solve these kind of problems differently, right? So that is where the external coaching will come into play. So these are the two most important things which I learned from you.
Oh, thanks, man. I think, yes, dialogue is very powerful. In fact, this model also, I'm teaching dialogue. Dialogue is the first thing I'm teaching people when they pick this model. Because it's, unless you are personally effective, how do you improve effectiveness of an organization? And dialogue is the most powerful tool to improve your personal. Great. The last one here, and then I think we can wrap up, is, what is that one thing that you enjoyed the most, being mentored or coached by me during whatever time that we have worked? It's almost 15, 16 years we have worked together.
So I will tell you the most important thing which I learned, or the way is basically the length and breadth or the depth of the knowledge, which means with you we were thinking and discussing strategies where you were coaching me to the last metric, that how we can improve this, right? So that generally, the coaches have a very big fallacy, which means whenever we go to a coach will either speak at 30,000 feet level. Most of the coaches speak there, right? But you had the ability to actually start with 30,000 feet and go to, let's say, 0.3 mm and then say, okay, यहाँ पे fix करने से this is what will happen, right? So that depth, was very, very important. I've had bosses earlier also, but most of the bosses were actually trying to help me solve that problem for that day. Okay, or trying to kind of help me navigate, let's say, political dynamics. कि अच्छा इसको ऐसे करेंगे तो ऐसा होगा. With you, it was, the entire, I would say, depth. We used to start from the top, and then we used to drill down and say, अच्छा इसको करने से ये होगा, right? That is something which I have learned, and that is also which I am now imbibing in my way of management, right? So when I actually mentor my teams, I do the same thing. So that is something which I really, really learned, and that was something which is very unique to you.
Thank you, man. Great. Thanks, Yar. So I think your story I'm also going to share there. Right now you are running One and Now, right? So introduce yourself so that we can inspire people with your story when I put this up there. So what are you doing? Where are you doing this?
So I will start with a little bit of history. So after my MBA, I always wanted to start a business because I'm a Gujarati. So Gujaratis का थोड़ा सा कीड़ा रहता है कि being an entrepreneur, etc. But being from a very middle class, earlier poor family, it was very difficult to have any kind of, let's say, capital to start business or any kind of connections or ideas, right? So it was very difficult. I knew I want to do something, but I don't know what. Okay. So the first break of my entrepreneurship also was given by you, right? In SellerWorks, right? So that was my first foray into entrepreneurship. And there I learned the dynamics of the business, right? While I was not invested in terms of money, but I actually learned, which means I did not bring a lot of capital, but I knew how to run a startup, right? I've seen the founder's pain. I've seen the leadership pains. I've seen the investor pains, right? So that was my first initiation. And after that, learning from there, I did multiple stints with multiple startups with the same idea that, how do I build my own business? Okay. 2021 or December, actually, 2020 December, when I left MediAssist and when I started my own consulting business, that was my first foray into the entrepreneurship. Yes, 2016 I had also started Trek Nomads, but Trek Nomads was basically parallelly started with jobs, etc., etc. But my first standalone business was in 2021, where we started helping startups raise money, etc., mentorship, etc. And then from there we basically started Vananam. Vananam basically is a conglomerate. So we don't call ourselves startup anymore because this year we will be clocking close to 1,500 crores in terms of top line. Okay, with net profits, last 2 years we've been profitable. Okay, we have primarily 4 businesses here, and this is something which I always wanted to do. I wanted to become, build a $50 billion business conglomerate with at least 60 to 70 businesses interests, right? So that this is we are basically we have started to live our dream, right? And I'm confident in next 7 to 8 years we will become that $50 billion business conglomerate with vast business interests across the globe. Right? So this is my journey, and in fact, you played a pivotal role in basically introducing me to the entrepreneurship.
Thanks, Mahendra, and good luck for your next 5 years plan. And hope to see you lead a $50 billion company very soon.
Definitely. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.